Hi, I'm Donald Palmer, Vice Chair of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, or EAC. This video is part of a series of webinars that will assist state and local election officials who complete the 2020 Election Administration and Voting Survey, or EAVS. This is an important project that collects data on election policy and election administration from nearly 6,500 election jurisdictions from across all 56 states and territories and the District of Columbia. I myself participated in EAVS as a state election official in Florida and in Virginia, and know that it can be a challenging project. At the time, we greatly appreciated the efforts of the EAC to facilitate the collection of this important data. EAVS is also a very important survey that helps shed light on how elections are administered and how Americans participate in elections. This webinar is for election officials who are new to leading the effort to complete EAVS for their state or territory. This webinar offers practical advice on the resources that are available to assist you in completing the survey. In addition, the EAC and its implementing partner, Forest March Group, are ready to assist you with any of the questions that you have in preparing your data submission. Thank you for watching and for working to complete the 2020 EAVS.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Nielsen, a senior researcher at Forest Marsh Group. EAVS is the federal government's effort to understand how federal general elections are administered in counties, municipalities, and other election jurisdictions across 56 states, territories, and the District of Columbia. It's an important survey that helps us understand how elections are conducted and how they can be improved. This is especially important for 2020, which was a record-breaking year in many respects. For the 2020 EAVS, at least 26 states have EAVS points of contact, or POCs, who are new to the project. We know EAVS is a huge project and can be intimidating, so this video is intended to help new POCs understand the resources that can assist them with EAVS, help them understand what to look out for as they're completing the survey, and offer some practical advice to help you provide high-quality, accurate data to the Election Assistance Commission. To start off, I'll highlight some of the resources and project documentation that the EAVS project team has made available. This isn't a comprehensive list, but I'll call out some of the items that can help new points of contact orient themselves to the project. First, you should know that the EAVS portal, which is located at eavsportal.com, is your one-stop shop for everything related to EAVS. The tabs on that website you'll use most often are the Resources tab, which has training materials that include videos, newsletters, a user guide to help you understand the data collection templates, and an Excel crosswalk to help you understand how the EAVS questions have changed since 2018. You'll also use the State Files tab a lot, which you can access by clicking Login on the EAVS portal homepage. Once you log in, you'll find access to your EAVS data submissions from 2016 and 2018, and your customized data collection templates that you'll use to collect and submit your EAVS data. You can also upload files or data submissions for the EAVS project team to review. If you don't have access to your login credentials for the EAVS portal, contact the EAVS help desk. Second, before you begin working on the 2020 EAVS, I highly recommend you read A Guide to the Election Administration and Voting Survey, which you'll find on the Resources tab of the EAVS portal. This is a policy guide that outlines the EAVS process from start to finish. We wrote this document specifically with new points of contact in mind, to help you understand why the EAC collects EAVS data, what the agency does with the data, and what your responsibilities are as a POC to coordinate data collection for your state or territory. It's a great starting point for putting all the other EAVS information into context. The last resource I want to highlight for you is our Technical Assistance Help Desk. This help desk is staffed by trained specialists who can assist you with any part of the EAVS project, whether it's a lost password, technical issues with the data collection templates, clarity on the survey questions or instructions, or anything else. The most common way to contact the help desk is through email, eavs@forestmarshgroup.com, or you can call the phone number listed on the State Files page of the EVES portal. We're committed to providing you with prompt support through the help desk, and all inquiries we receive will be answered within 1 business day, and often much sooner than that. We're now going to hear from 3 state points of contact who have completed EVES in the past. These POCs are going to share some of the challenges they've encountered with the survey and provide advice for completing the survey successfully in 2020.
My name is Summer Davis. I work for the Oregon State Elections Division. My title is Compliance Specialist. Basically, in my role in the office, I'm a lead worker, overseeing lots of various projects, one of which is the EVES report. I actually first started working on the EVES report in the year 2000, and I have done it off and on for the last 20 years.
All right, so you're one of our long timers.
Yes.
So Oregon is one of the all vote by mail states. Do you have advice for other states that might have transitioned to being an all vote by mail state this year when it comes to EVES?
Be very clear about what your data is. It's one of my biggest pieces of advice in general. Know your data. The value in the EVES report is that it allows an apple-to-apple comparison. But if you've only got applesauce, be very clear that you've only got applesauce. Don't try to make it back into apples. Just be very clear that this is not a one-to-one correlation. It does not exactly match, because I found that you at Forest Marsh have been very willing to to include those descriptions about the data, to say that it's applesauce, that it's not a one-to-one match. And so know your data, know the definitions. In our state, we don't have quote-unquote polling places, but we do have places where voters can show up and receive a ballot and vote in a privacy booth there. It's the county clerk's office. So there's always a big, do I report those as polling places? Do I not report them as polling places? So it's a matter also of know your data and know what the terms mean. So when a question asks for the number of poll workers, well, we don't have poll workers, so report election workers, and I'm very clear that it's election workers. And so it's imperative that you understand what is being asked and how it relates to your data.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Now, can you share some of the wisdom that you've picked up in your years of doing EVES?
Ask questions. I remember when I first started, there was no one to ask questions of, and we would frequently get the EVES report returned to us because we wouldn't be reporting things. For example, absentee voters. At the time, the people who were compiling the EVES data, and this is in the early aughts, in the early 2000s, they believed because Oregon was vote by mail, we all voted quote unquote absentee, but that's not how we viewed ourselves. So I would report absentee voters as those voters who are actually registered as wanting a ballot absentee somewhere else outside of Oregon, and would frequently get the report back saying, uh, this doesn't match. Aren't you guys all absentee? Um, and I always questioned that before I filled out the report, but never had anyone I could ask the question of. And I have found the current administration of the Eves report, of gathering the data for Eves report, so much better and so helpful. There are people, there are resources available to you to ask those questions, to get the nuance of what that question really means, what the data is they're trying to pull from us. And so my biggest piece of advice, ask questions. There's always going to be somebody there who's able to answer them and direct you in completing the report in a manner that is useful, that is clear, and that provides data for Congress as well as academics who want to research different elections issues that this report highlights.
All right. Do you have any other advice for new points of contact to help them be successful with the 2020 Eves?
Don't wait till the last minute because it is a lot of data. And also, it's helpful. The way that I work, I start by reviewing the previous submission. So that way I have some idea of what data I should see in my reports that I pull, to see if something goes awry. If I, run the wrong query and enter the information into the wrong fields, at least I've got some idea. So I always start by reviewing that. I also review anything over the previous 2-year period that may have changed with our instruction to our county elections officials. In Oregon, county elections officials are responsible for registering people to vote and actually conducting the election. So there could have been instruction in that 2-year period of time that changed the meaning of the data that I would be pulling. So I make sure that there's nothing that has changed in that 2-year period, so I can know the information that I'm reporting is accurate and what is being asked. That, I guess, would be it.
Hi, I'm Sarah Stotts, and I am a elections specialist here in the state of Wisconsin. My first time doing Eves was for the 2018 general election, and so this will be my second go at it.
Okay, so what do you wish that you'd known when you were first getting acclimated to the Eves project?
I think, again, as I said, I think knowing how different the information could be from year to year, the questions, the order of the questions, how big of a change it could be. I really wasn't prepared for, any of it. I was told I was going to do this Eves project, and that everybody who said they'd worked on it in the past said it took a lot of time, but I really didn't know what to expect, how we were going to approach it, what it was that was all going to be getting collected and how. And in Wisconsin, we do it a little differently, where we at the state submit the entire report instead of having individual municipalities or counties submit the information, because we have a statewide database. And so, we have 1,850 municipalities, each doing their own elections. So, it's a lot of information, a very big table of information of data that we gather, and I just really wasn't at all prepared for how that was going to work. But I think that, you know, it definitely helps to go into it with an open mind. And I think that, like I said earlier, that this year will be a little bit more easier overall, not just for someone who's done it before, but for new people, because of the tables showing what's new, what's changed, what's no longer there. I think that will definitely be very helpful.
All right, and what advice do you have for other new points of contact to be successful with the 2020 Eves?
I would say to really like review the full survey, all the different sections before you get started. So that way, if you need to reach out to other sources for some of the information, like we found with the election equipment section, that you are prepared and can get them those questions so that they can get the answers to in a timely fashion, instead of, you know, waiting until you get to that section and then they may be busy with other things. So just reviewing the full survey first, make sure you know what's expected, and planning ahead. And then also carefully reviewing the table of your data before you do your final submission, after it comes back from the initial review by Forest Marsh, just to be sure that, you know, everything is what you are expecting and that you don't have any surprises later of things that you either recorded wrong or whatever the case may be.
Hello, my name is Angela Ryan. I work for the Illinois State Board of Elections. I am the legislative director and responsible for the EVES survey, as well as many other reports that are due for the state legislature and other federal government agencies.
All right, so Angela, can you tell us some of your experiences when you were a new EVES point of contact? What were some of the challenges you had in completing the survey?
I believe that my first experiences were being a little overwhelmed, I'll have to be perfectly honest, because it was a little daunting. It was new to me. Elections, well, like I said, elections are not necessarily new to me. I've been doing them for 30 years. From the perspective of the recording and the data collection and the information required by EVES, I did not have any existing knowledge. So some of my experiences were trying to understand the complexity of the questions and basically how the data intermingled and how the data was not as readily available as I had hoped it would be from the jurisdictions, but that there were ways to cultivate answers and or work with the jurisdictions to get the answers for them.
So you mentioned that you're a state that relies on your jurisdictions to submit some of the data. Can you talk more about your experiences with that?
In the state of Illinois, it's a bottom-up system where each one of the 108 jurisdictions are responsible for the elections, and therefore they're responsible for the data collection. They're responsible for the information they have. And in many circumstances, you have different support vendors for each one of the jurisdictions. So therefore, sometimes you won't see jurisdiction A collect exactly the same type of information or data sets that jurisdiction B will, because of the different vendors that they use to collect this data. However, each one of them is responsible for supplying us with the data. So what I do is I reach out, I create a questionnaire. I essentially take the information that you provide to me in the survey and try to rework it so it asks questions and gets the details from the jurisdictions that are more in line with the methodology or the data sets that they collect, so that the information can be compiled and meet the needs of the survey.
All right, so going back to your first EVES experience in 2018, what do you wish that you'd known as you were kind of getting up to speed on the EVES project?
I really wish I would have known how the information intermingled better. Do you know what I mean? That there were, that perhaps there were circumstances in which some of the data was going to match other data, like, B13 is supposed to match F12, but I didn't know how it worked that way. I really, really enjoyed the process in the end, and then even now reviewing the surveys, trying to understand and getting a better understanding of how the data intermingles and how I can get that information.
Okay, and what advice do you have for other new points of contact who are looking to be successful with the 2020 EVES?
Pick up the phone, talk to the jurisdictions. I mean, like I said, in Illinois, we specifically have the jurisdictions filling out this data. It's not compiled from a statewide database or anything of that nature. It's the actual jurisdiction. So it's very important for me to pick up the phone and actually talk to the people that are filling out the survey so that they have a better understanding of what I'm asking for. And so that, for instance, one of the best pieces of advice I have in my circumstance in Illinois is to actually take the time to review when I get it, not later, but when I get it, so that when I have questions, something that is fresh on my mind, something that will be fresh on the mind of the jurisdiction as they've filled out the information. I find things like, I'm reviewing a few of them right now, where we have instances where they'll totally leave out the types of tabulators or scanners or equipment that they possibly used for a person with a disability. And so now I have the ability to review it in a timely manner and then get back to them right so that they can provide the information readily, that's readily available to them, but provide the information that is accessible at that moment. I would only add one more piece of advice, and that is to reach out to the FORS Marsh Group for questions. I found that in my first year that it was very helpful when I was essentially unaware of how the systems fit into place and things of that nature. I was able to call upon Lindsay and other members of her team to get insight on how the information is collected, why it's collected, and essentially how it intermingles.
Thank you so much to Summer, Sarah, and Angela for sharing such helpful advice. As these 3 points of contact have highlighted, each state's EVES reporting process is going to look different, depending on how centralized your databases are, how much you rely on local jurisdictions to provide data, and what your election laws look like. However, I want to close this webinar with some advice that's broadly applicable to all new POCs. First, start the survey early and make sure you read all the questions and instructions so you understand what data you'll be providing. The survey is quite long and the questions can be complex, and you want to leave yourself plenty of time so you're not rushed during the process. You can download a PDF of the survey questions and instructions from the Downloads tab of the EVES portal. The first draft of your EVES data is due on February 1st, 2021. Our project team will review your data and will work with you to make sure you make any necessary corrections before your final data submission is due on March 1st, 2021. We also recommend that you review your EVES submissions from previous years to help you understand what the contours of your 2020 data will look like. If you have any documentation from your predecessor about how your state has approached EVES in the past, or any records of what data queries you run, that will be enormously helpful. In addition, your state's election laws will affect what EVES data you report. You can reference your 2020 policy submission on the State Files tab of the EVES portal. Next, understand what data sources you'll consult to assemble your submission and what other offices you'll need to work with, whether they're other state or territory level offices or local offices. If you need information from another office, make sure to give these folks plenty of lead time to provide you with the data you're seeking. The next piece of advice will differ a little bit depending on whether your state or territory is considered top-down versus bottom-up or hybrid. If you're in a top-down state that can pull its EVES data from a centralized database, we recommend consulting the Excel crosswalk, available on the Resources tab of the EVES portal, to help you understand how each column in the Excel template matches up with the EVES items. This document will help you structure your data queries. If you're a bottom-up or hybrid state that relies on local jurisdictions to submit some or all of your EVES data, we strongly recommend using the online template to collect that information. You can reference the Data Template User Guide and the Working with Local Jurisdictions webinar, both of which are on the Resources tab of the EVES portal, to help you understand how the online template works and how it interacts with the Excel template. In addition, make sure you communicate with local jurisdictions frequently throughout the process. Next, use the comment space associated with each EVES question to provide context to your data. If you use different election terminology than what's used in the question, or if your submission is incomplete in some way, it really helps us to have that information when we're analyzing your data. In addition, carefully review each of your data submissions for accuracy. The error checks built into both data collection templates can help with this process, but we recommend doing a thorough manual review as well. Keep in mind that the chief election official for your state or territory will eventually have to certify this data as accurate and complete to the best of their knowledge. Also, EVES data are used widely by scholars, state and federal legislators, journalists, and others in the election community. We know that the 2020 EVES data are going to receive extra scrutiny, given that the 2020 election was unprecedented. So we want to work with you to make sure you're providing data that's as accurate as possible. Lastly, if you have questions about anything related to EVES, contact our help desk. We have trained support assistants who can provide you with advice on anything you need. We're committed to providing the highest level of support we can, and we want to hear of any challenges you're experiencing so we can work with you to solve them. Thank you for watching this webinar. Those of us at the EVES team are excited to work with you on this important project. As a reminder, you can find additional webinars and other information and resources about EVES at the EVES portal. We are also ready and eager to answer any technical questions you have about the 2020 EVES. You can contact the project team at eavs@forcemarshgroup.com.